stand up, Dave. I'm going to back up a little bit so I don't trip over my own cord.
Oh, it's we should.
And then we have 5 extension cords.
Serious. Oh, yeah.
All right, Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. Call this regularly scheduled council meeting. Pledges of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up, I would look for consideration and approval of the agenda. Any changes, additions, deletions?
I don't have any.
I'll make that motion to approve. It's going to table 12.1 and 12.2 since the mayor is not here. Unless somebody can report that.
What is it?
Okay, Marcy's going to do that. Then let's check that. Okay, got a motion from Kyle.
I'll second Kyle's motion.
Second from Gina. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, public forum. This is an opportunity for citizens to present items to the council that are not on the agenda. Limited to 3 minutes and a maximum of 15 minutes is set aside. If your item needs follow-up from the city, staff will arrange for that. First call for public forum. Anyone? I'll make a second call for public forum. And a third and final call for public forum. Okay, moving on to 5.1, 2025 Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities presentation. Darren, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm Darren Lee with Flaridian Hood, and we represent the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities down at the state capitol. And of course, Pine City is a member. And so we like to get out to our member cities during the interim between legislative sessions, kind of give you an update about what we've been doing down at the capitol and what we see coming up in the next legislative session. So once again, thanks for having me. We can go to the next slide. So just kind of a reminder about who we are. We're more than 100 cities, I think about 120 now across the state outside of the 7-county metro area. So that would be what distinguishes us from the League of Minnesota Cities, which is mostly metro area cities. The issues that we work on, I work on transportation primarily at the Capitol, but I'd say local government aid and bonding or economic development, capital investment is kind of our big issues, and then among others that we work on there as well.
Could you tell me the second thing after local government aid?
Environment and energy. Oh, what I just said?
Yeah.
Transportation is what I do.
Okay, transportation. All right, thanks.
Sure. And so we can go to the next slide. So recap, before I get to that though, I passed out some information that you have. This is our session report. This kind of will go into more detail and a narrative about everything we did, more than I'll be able to get into tonight. You've got a chart that shows different outcomes for the different things that we worked on. You have a flyer that has our upcoming events. Join us at some of those. One of which, the first one is our fall conference in Grand Rapids. We're going to have a lot of good presentations, and we have a workshop on paid family leave. I know that cities are dealing with that issue. You're going to have to come up with policies on that. And so I think that will be beneficial. And then you have staff contacts. So there's all of our staff with all the issues that we work on. If you have questions on any of these issues or concerns, please reach out, give us a call, and we're happy to answer any questions. So back to recap. We could go to the next slide. So sort of just setting the stage with the beginning of session, you know, if you recall all the way back to January, it was a little chaotic at the beginning of the legislative session because of some issues with eligibility on one candidate was ruled ineligible. the Republicans had a temporary sort of 67, 66 majority. They tried to convene. Democrats didn't show up for the first month approximately to keep the Republicans from gaining a quorum. So very, very inside baseball stuff. But eventually they did come to an agreement. And so the committees ended up being split even 50-50. And they ended up trading off. So the Republicans would hold a hearing one week. The Democrats would hold hearings the next week. Unique that was 67-67 tie. That hasn't happened since 1979. Lisa Dameth was elected speaker. And so everything was kind of like a four-way negotiation because the House had to negotiate with itself before. Usually they just have to negotiate with the Senate and the governor. But so that was kind of the interesting dynamic. And so there's two. We can go to the next slide. Pass the budget. They do a 2-year budget in odd number of years for the upcoming 2 years. So 26, 27, and then pass a bonding bill. I say hopefully because, you know, it's always a question of whether or not there's going to be a bonding bill. They have to have 60% of votes in order to pass a bonding bill. So it's one thing where the minority has some influence, minority party has some influence. And then they did not pass one last year in 2024. The last bill that was passed was 2023. So like a schedule where they do a budget year, bonding year, budget year, bonding year. But that sort of traditional schedule has kind of been thrown off the last 10 years or so. It doesn't always go that way. So this would be kind of a makeup bill for 2024. So on the next slide, we've got sort of our agenda, the coalition's agenda: protect local government aid, a bonding bill that I just talked about. Those are some of the big items that are contained in a bonding bill, typically. Some of our initiatives. Of course, Public Facilities Authority is where all that wastewater and drinking water funds are distributed from. As you know, those are such expensive water projects for small towns. And then business development, public infrastructure is another item. And then the last couple of years, we had a initiative to replace lead service lines throughout the state. And we got some money, but there's going to be chunks of money with a goal of, in 10 years, eventually eliminating lead water lines. So, and then EMS funding and zoning. Those were two big things up the last couple of years. I'll talk more about zoning and housing here in a little bit. So we can go to the next slide. So I wanted to include this one just because this kind of shows an illustration of what the budget outlook was. So you can see there's that skinny blue bar, 456 million. That was what was still projected for the upcoming biennium, which we're now in. But it was really that second year window. They do a 4-year window. There's the first and second biennium. It's really that second biennium where you had that $6 billion deficit on the horizon. And so they took a chunk of that more, so which I'll get into here on the next slide. So that was really kind of what drove the discussion. And there you have the governor's proposal. And what I'll say about his proposal, you can see the numbers that he was proposing to reduce. So there's still more to do. But his kind of a lot of what he relied on was shifting state costs to counties for health and human services, which, as you know, the counties are responsible for delivering a lot of those services. So cost shifts is a lot of what he relied on. On the next slide, we've got the House and Senate budget targets that you can see that the House had proposing a little bit larger cut. But what's interesting about this is the final numbers actually were below either of those targets. So I think once they set targets, but then once they actually had to draft the bills and figure out where to find the cuts, it's a little harder to find them once you actually are deciding what to cut and what not to cut. So I think it ended up at only 283 million in cuts in the first biennium, and I think like 1.9 in the second biennium. So they'll have to come back and do some more cutting either the following year. So what does it mean for LGA? What's interesting about LGA is the Senate, you can go to the next one, was proposing to cut LGA, which kind of surprised us. It was the Senate DFL that was proposing cuts. The House had no cuts. The governor proposed any cuts, but the Senate had 20 million in LGA cuts, and similar for county program aid as well. But they also raised taxes in their bill, and also had spending in other areas through like tax credits, which are also, all part of the tax bill generally. So we can go to the next one. So we were very critical of those cuts. We didn't want to see any cuts whatsoever. They had a lot of interesting things in that bill, but there's spending on other things that grow with inflation, like the homestead credit, which benefits metro area more so than greater Minnesota. There was actually like a sales tax exemption for PGA golf events. So, I think the golf fans can afford to pay sales tax on their tickets to the Ryder Cup. But yet there's still cuts to LGA. So we said that was unacceptable. And we testified on that. You can see on the next slide, there's our executive director testifying on LGA. And so there's some of our activities that we did. Rural senators, the governor's office, action alerts that we send you out. You responding to those really helps a lot. And then it was nice that we had the House kind of backing us up on saying that we're not going to do any cuts to local government aid. So luckily, those didn't get through, but depending on how the future forecasts, upcoming forecasts, budget forecasts go, we'll have to stay on top of that and make sure that that's not a target in upcoming years as well. I want to talk a little bit about bonding. We can go to the next one. So, like I said before, hasn't been a bill since 2023. You have to have 60% of the votes to pass it. There's the governor's sort of big ticket items. Interestingly, working on transportation, I was surprised that there was nothing in there for local roads and bridges, local road improvement plan, local bridge replacement. And then I think he did not set anything aside for local projects, very small amount. So it was mostly protecting, preserving state buildings, essentially, is what his proposal was. And then the MnSCU system, the U of M system, parks and that sort of thing. So then we can go to the next slide. There's our bonding efforts. We did press conferences on that. You can see there with some of our labor allies who rely so much on a capital investment bill or bonding bill for those work projects. Because it's a jobs bill is what it is. So we did radio and online ads as well, pushing for a bonding bill. And so we did end up getting a bonding bill, luckily. And the next slide kind of has some numbers on what we ended up with. So compared to the governor's original proposal, I think this ended up being pretty good, considering that, sometimes these bills are, I think 2 years ago it was 1.5 billion. So 773 million is relatively small compared to 1.5 billion, but you had, 42 million for local roads, 20 million for local bridges, and then Public Facilities Authority. The governor was only at 99 and we ended up with 176. So there was no local projects funded. It was just straight state funding. So, none of the city or local government requests made it in there, but which is, good and bad, but I guess, bad for those people making the requests, but there was more money in there for these other items so that you could get a little bigger price tag on those. So, and then policy wise, the increase in caps on those water projects, those water grants, going from 5 to 10 and then 7 to 12 for those different programs was big because that hasn't been raised in a while, and those projects have gotten much more expensive. So I want to do a little bit about housing. That'll be the last thing, and I just got a couple slides on looking ahead, and then I'll let you get on with the rest of your agenda. Missing middle is what they called it last year. This year it was yes to homes, but basically the same thing. Same set of packages. Parking reform, saying that you can't mandate a minimum number of parking spots when you're doing development. Authority saying you got to allow multifamily housing mixed in with commercial, for example. Reform of homeowners associations, and then increasing density, saying we can't have minimum lot sizes. So, and we know that these decisions are best made locally. So it was really us and other city groups were the only ones really lobbying against this stuff. You had developers on the one side, along with sort of environmental groups that want to increase density for environmental reasons like energy use, that sort of thing. So the other thing was aesthetics. So like saying you can't mandate certain materials, or you can't mandate that houses have columns on them or pillars or those sorts of things. So on the next slide, we show some of our efforts here on that. There was a lot of hearings, but nothing reached the floor of the House or the Senate. And then sort of at the end, there was some city groups that were willing to maybe compromise on the aesthetics, like, okay, the columns and the pillars thing, fine. But the advocates at that point were frustrated with, our opposition, and for a couple of years now. And so they said too little too late and didn't want to negotiate at that point. But this will come back up again next year, so we'll have to be fighting this again. And so we'll see what happens. Looking ahead, lots of uncertainty. I have had in my notes here, will Governor Walsh run again? He just announced, I think yesterday, that he's going to run again. There was a special election yesterday as well for the Melissa Hortman seat, who, as you remember, back in June was tragically assassinated. And so that seat went to a Democrat as her successor. So now the House was temporarily at 67, 66. Now it's back to 67. Zach Stevenson was just elected the new leader of the Democrats in the House. And then, will there be increased security, safety measures? There's debate about should there be metal detectors or some sort of like weapons screening when you go into the Capitol. There currently is not, but that's going to be controversial. And then there's a couple of special elections in November for 2 Senate seats, one vacated by Nicole Mitchell, who was convicted of burglary earlier this summer, and then one Senator, Bruce Way. But those are expected to stay with the same party. So the balance will still be probably 34, 33 in the Senate. And there's construction on the state office building, so it's going to be difficult to meet with your House of Representatives members next year. And then session starting February 17th. And of course, from the big beautiful bill, as President Trump calls it, what kind of impact is that going to have on states with Medicaid and those sort of spending decisions that were made. So I think that my next one just has upcoming events, which I talked a little bit about. You can come help us advocate at our Legislative Action Day, our fall conference, and then we've already got our summer conference for next year, date set in New Ulm. So with that, I can answer any questions. I think the contact info is up there too. Thanks again for having me, and happy to answer any questions. Yes.
Our city has a capital investment tour coming for the bonding
Okay.
for our wastewater or sewer ponds. Is there someone on here I can reach out to that help make sure best we can to present ourselves to this committee?
Yes, the person I would recommend to talk to about any wastewater or drinking water issues is Liz Wafel. Yep, you see her on there. She would be the one that I would call. Sure.
In a very complex, but just a short version answer, LGA seems to be hot button. And it's, according to what you presented, there's only one real chamber that wants to cut it. As we begin to look forward, do you think it would be prudent to continue to bank on having some of that LGA, or do you think, in your personal opinion, that it's going to be, if you will?
You know, I mean, we'll continue to argue that it shouldn't be cut. I mean, it's hard for me to say likely that is, especially forecast coming up in November, the budget forecast. We'll kind of have to see how that is, but it's possible it can come back up, or the Senate may decide, you know, that was a bad idea that we tried to cut that last year. You know, maybe we shouldn't go that route again because they got some significant criticism for it. So it remains to be seen. The House, we still have on our side against LGA cuts. I think it hasn't been cut to my knowledge. I think you have to go back to Pawlenty was the last time there was really significant cuts to LGA. So it hasn't happened in a while. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen. So it's a long way of saying it's hard for me to say.
Understood. Yeah. Thank you.
Which parties are leaning towards the cuts?
Well, it was the Senate Democrats that were the only ones that were proposing the cuts. The House Democrats, Republicans were both strongly in favor. The nice thing about the tax chair on the Democrat side in the House is she doesn't like the local option sales taxes. And so because she doesn't like that, she's a strong advocate of LGA. That's her argument that she makes for why she doesn't like the half-cent local sales taxes that cities have to come to the legislature to get authorization for. So she's strongly opposed to those, but the right side of that is that she's a strong advocate for LGA. And Greg Davids, who's the tax chair in the House on the GOP side, he's from Greater Minnesota, and so he knows that cities in Greater Minnesota benefit, disproportionately benefit from that, and so he's also an advocate for it. So
The second question would be on the revenue side. I haven't heard a lot on the revenues that are coming into the state for sales tax and that. Are they up or down? Do you know?
I'm not totally sure, but like there was. So what tax bill, there were some revenue increases. So like they increased the tax on cannabis that they put in place last year. That was one increase that was in there. Data centers got an exemption on sales tax for their energy use, which they got rid of that. And so data centers will now have to pay sales taxes on energy use. So, and I think construction materials, they kept some of those benefits tax. So that's expected to generate some revenue. So those were the two major revenue raisers in that bill.
I have a question for you too. Being that we're relatively new to joining the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, and I'm interested. I remember the presentation before, and I know we're members. I don't know that we've taken advantage, besides the discount on our legal fees. What would you say your greatest asset is that you can offer us, and something that we could be sure that we pay attention to and use as long as we're one of your members?
Well, I would say two things. One is these people are resources that are at the Capitol every day, who are, eyes and ears on everything that is impacting you. Like Elizabeth Waitful, she knows more about water treatment than anybody I know.
To reach out, even though she's with Flirting Hood, to reach out to her, there's no cost for inquiries.
No, I mean, now if you wanted to hire Flaherty and Hood to lobby on behalf of that project specifically, then that would be a contract that you would have to do. But just to get information, no, that's totally fine. You can reach out. But now if you wanted to hire Elizabeth or myself to lobby for that project, then there would be a contract that you'd have to enter into for that. which is an option if you want to go that route. And then I guess secondly is our events like our fall conference I mentioned. You know, we always have great speakers. There's a lot of good information. They're interactive. You can meet city officials from around the state. It's a good opportunity to network with your peers. Like, hey, you know, like, what are you guys hearing about this issue, or what are you doing on this issue? You know, like from everything from talk about like anything from golf courses to economic development authorities, you know, regulating chickens. Surprising to me, we get a lot of questions about chickens, which was something that I thought was interesting, but a lot of cities apparently are dealing with ordinances on chickens. So
Us included.
yeah, so there you go. So but just
So the
anything,
people in
yeah.
the network.
yep, that's a huge benefit. And then of course us, yeah, and us down at the Capitol, you know, working on your behalf for sure.
So we, know you're working, but we need to reach out in order to pull some of those assets that we have not really been utilizing.
Yeah, and so like another thing, you know, is we're an organization that, you know, we're member driven. So like, you know, I talk about what our agenda is, that's comes from the members. So like, if you say like, you know, when we get together at our conferences and we you know, vote on our policy priorities, you know, if you have involvement with that, then you can kind of help us set the agenda. So like EMS is something that we've gotten more involved in the last couple of years, you know, ambulance services that we hadn't been involved with in the past, but because of hearing from cities that do have their own ambulance services, a lot of those license holders are cities. And so we were hearing from them about that issue, and we're able to get some funding to help make up those operating deficits for those cities. So that's one example. And then the housing we've gotten heavily involved in the last couple of years as well. Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving right along.
It was a big meeting. We talked about the Community Reads project. Spoke about the community room use, you know, and libraries very, very willing to work with us, but it has, the city using it often has kind of impinged on some of their scheduled out things that are already printed that they do a collaboration with, but we're working through some of those things. They want to, in the future, put up study carols, not study carols, that's my old fashioned word. They want to kind of make some private uses in the back so somebody can go back there and have it like a little office space or study space. Yeah, some ideas that I think that could be a project that could happen quite inexpensively. And we talked about the light. We may or may not have a light there to help with the parking lot. We can look again tonight when we leave.
Hopefully it's still light when we leave. Ordinance review, we discussed design for parking lots, parking size spaces, and things, old business that we are just continuing to work out to try to impact what is in place already. With that required number of parking spaces for developers is something that came up about a year ago, and we are beginning to look at that again as well to try to make parking more conducive to building housing units. We discussed the truck route ordinance a little bit more, that back by planning to ordinance with some weight questions that were answered. So it makes a lot more sense now at 6 tons per axle rather than 6 tons per vehicle. We discussed the conditional use permit ordinance and the variance and appeals ordinance as we continue to look at those things to recommend or not if we can make adjustments to our ordinances or changes that developers have farther along in a project. So say the first year something comes up and they need to make a change and it's small and it doesn't totally alter the scope of what's happening without having to have the public hearing. So just, again, all things trying to be more conducive to builders. And we looked at assessment policy stuff, to continue the conversation on that stuff. So that's what I've got for that. And then we have HRA in here as well.
HRA happened on site. It was fun for the residents to see us coming and going. I think they're kind of proud to show off their building. We discussed trying to move forward with the remediation of the water. We haven't officially heard anything about our application. Feeling is it's not going so great, but we should hear it by the end of October. That was a little disappointing. But I was thinking of that while he was talking. We reached out to them. And trying to move forward with the HRA trust as a mechanism to access the funding that we have. We talked about that. They were there to make a presentation, but everyone there had already seen it. So hopefully the whole council will get to see their presentation. Again, I read that it can help you earn $6 for every dollar you bring in when you have this mechanism. Those big money funders are ready to give money easier when they have that assurance that things are going to be always used for housing. So we had a lot of discussion about that.
Any questions, council? Not, we'll move on to consent items. I'd look for a motion to approve the consent item.
I did have a question. So the August 6th meeting minutes got tabled last meeting. Did everything get addressed for getting that updated this time around, or to the best of my knowledge? Okay.
Go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent items.
I'll second it.
I've got a motion by Gina, second by Dave. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, 8.1, request for council action, sign.
Comes here, he has a request for council action.
Evening, council. After, excuse me, after the last council meeting, we were to meet, Nicole and I were meeting over the funding opportunities that were sent from the Rev Financial Group from E1. And as you'll see in the action item, is our proposal was to take the $250,000 and utilize that as a immediate down payment and to implement the 163,464.18 a year for 15 years, with noting that any of the funds that were paid ahead of time before the truck is actually delivered, we would be credited in the actual price at the 5%. And if there are any questions, Ryan Clary from Fire Safety USA is here as well. If there's any direct questions that I may not have the answer for.
Council, any questions?
So I know one of the discussion points was to look at having a $250,000 payment in 2026, and I'm just curious on how that all shook out. I know you guys want to go back and look at the financing, so maybe touch upon that a little bit.
This is just, go ahead.
I just think that it was back down to the 164 to help balance the actual budget for the rate city's percentage increase for taxes. So having respect for that with the other purchases that are planned through the city.
I know one of the other conversations was around the plow truck as well for financing. So is the plan to increase property taxes, or are we going to look at alternative funding either through our water and sewer fund or our CDs, or what are our options, or is the only option that we're looking at is possible tax impact on the taxpayers? And the only reason I bring that up is that per our last discussion, renters don't pay property taxes, but they use city services. So how do we capture that they're also paying for the services that are required, which is a possibility through the water and sewer fund? Or do we just expect single family residents to pay for those property taxes, or basically all the businesses and commercial properties that don't have tax abatements to pay for those increased services?
You know, currently we're just looking at the budget and not those other.
Is this, as a whole city, is this a good time to be spending that amount of money? Or would another year make any difference? One more year out? Well,
Just in my opinion,
I was just asking the finance people.
oh,
Why? Look to tell us about the money.
We should follow what the auditor says for another year.
Another year.
Cannot hold. I will have to look into this to be mentioned on my water. The auditor pointed out that million deficit because there's an ordinance to be in place for those.
Thank you.
Well, Jen, I spent the last 3 or 4 days doing a lot of Googling, I guess, if that's what you want to say. Research.
Dave.
Yeah, I was Googling. You know, and I found a few facts that I was kind of interesting. Since 2011, costs have went up over 100% on everything that concerns the fire truck, and that's part of the problem. You've got other factors involved. You've only got 3 major manufacturers in the country, and because of that, kind of a monopoly, if you really want to get down to it, they've got control of this market. They can dictate when it's going to be built, how fast it's going to be built, and it really kind of puts you in the back seat right from the start. Inflation has been another big factor in what's happening. Labor shortages, COVID didn't help. Material shortages. I watched a couple YouTube videos on what China does, and I'm not going to China, but you can buy a $2 million truck in China for $400,000. So it's really tough. We're not going to see that kind of prices here, but we know what's going to happen. It's going to go up 300,000-400,000. The anticipated future and everything I read is, I mean, if you like to gamble, then gamble. But I think looking at our national leadership is going to be there for another couple of years before you'll see any major changes, if there's a change. I don't anticipate seeing a lot of difference in any part of that of the economy that has to do with the money that they control. So I say we got to do it, and I don't like it any more than anybody else, but it does affect our ISO ratings, which does affect our taxpayers on a big end. And we're not going to get the money we do put in there is going to be put on interest, which is better than just sitting there not getting us anything. I don't know if we get anything better than that on the market right now with our CDs. So I guess we're not really, 4 years from now, if E1 decides to go out of business, hopefully we get our money back. But I don't know. I guess I'm for moving forward on this.
well, this conversation started 3 years. I remember when I was the prices from then, even looking at and the amount of city time and resources that we put in vetting out trucks and trying to find trucks and watching the art just continually go like this. And what plateauing, not gonna fall. It's a lot of money, but it's a huge investment in the future of the city, in my opinion. And with some of the stuff that you said too, maybe being able to refleet and move some things around.
Well, one thing
It's
you
a
gotta
lot of
remember
money.
is that there's a 25-year lifespan on the fire truck general. That's usually what everybody uses. We take, in our case, and a lot of other smaller towns around here, over the years that I've seen, is that the 25 years that the main line pumper gets, now it's a second line pumper or a third line. And kept for another 5 or 10 years, and probably in our case, a few more years than that. Some of the towns around here, a lot more than that. So it's not gonna change. I think putting this into our fleet is gonna put us in a position of being ready and I guess having what we need for quite a few years ahead. It's gonna put us in the forefront and not behind the 8 ball. So, and we're not gonna get it for a few years, so we gotta just hope we don't have anything major. Luckily, we have some very good mutual aid contracts with a lot of facilities or towns around here that do have ladder trucks that we can use in the case of a need. So yes, I guess that's all I got to say.
Our economic impact, if we were to lose our ISO when the audit's triggered in 3 years or 4 years, I think weighs on my mind heavily. If we can't invite in commercial and industrial buildings to come in and develop and add value to the city of Pine City, if they can't afford their fire insurance. So that does weigh on me. I'm not necessarily opposed to going the route that we have for financing, but I'd also like to make sure that we're getting that plow truck. I really think that we need to say, if we have any place that we've been setting aside a rainy day fund, I want to look at that and see if we can pay off some of that debt sooner than later and save the taxpayers little money. This might be a good baseline start, but we're gonna have to start looking for some extra money to help ease that taxpayer hit.
How many years would this be before?
This currently is a 15-year.
And in my Googling, I read that fire trucks last between 10 and 25 years, but probably ours could be on the longer end. But look, the last ladder truck we had, there's some issues with water on the fire truck, which is kind of silly to me. So I don't disagree with anything that was set up here. I just think, as I said last week, it's not no, it would be not right now for me.
All right. Conversation from council, look to entertain a motion one way or the other.
Just to interject one quick thing is that if the contract and Ryan can correct me if I'm wrong, but if the contract isn't put in place, because we were talking about waiting and stuff, just at the end of October, the price of that truck goes up by $78,000. So it's a significant dollar-wise increase, but that's probably a 4.5% somewhere around there.
Our interest over 15 years would be probably not 4.5%.
They pay us 5% on the money until it's delivered. So for those 3 years that we're making payments, we get 5% back on the money until delivered. So that, in my opinion, that helps with that piece of it.
Maybe our E1 rep can share some foresight or what he thinks the future looks. I mean, dig into your crystal ball and tell us what we should do.
Yeah. Especially post-COVID and all that, yeah, the prices have gone, you said, since COVID and such. Sales have outpaced production. That's been pushed out. So a truck that used to take 10 months to get now takes 3 years to get it. But that's also caused cities to understand they might not get the truck in 4 years from now, with even more sales in the system. So, industry that's unique for sure.
It kind of angers me a little bit is, you know, these CEOs, when I was doing a lot of reading about this, you know, they're almost arrogant. I mean, they've got the world by the whatever. And it just angers me that, you know, they can sit back there, they don't have to, you know, and their board of directors, I read about a couple of the companies, the board of directors are very angry that they aren't expanding their production. And that was one of the things that I looked at, you know, are these companies trying to, you know, car companies and other expand and do other business, they build more. But the fire engine companies aren't building more. They're just existing with what they got. And it's kind of like having a monopoly as far as I'm concerned. And they've got everything and we got nothing. So I can't anticipate change much. That's my feelings. Just everything I read.
Has purchased new facilities to
Yeah.
produce more. Our specific grant E1, I believe it said that they built 50 more trucks this past year, as opposed to this year. So within a year's time frame, they're projecting that they're going to produce 100 more trucks than previous. What is an industry new thing lately is to standardize, right? So it's not like a Ford F-150 that they're just punching out the same exact truck and it's easy to build. Every single fire truck is different, and that's why the hours take so long. So the manufacturers are pushing us dealers to sell more of a standard truck to help them produce quicker so that they can catch up on the backlog and make truck easier to build.
That makes sense.
That's for a little crystal ball. I see more standardization in the future, at least until they get their crazy backlogs.
The new facilities take 8 to 12 months to bring up to production.
Tom, there's been a lot of discussion around a fire district. If a fire district was formed and this became a district component, would the city be held to pay off that loan, or would the district buy out the loan, or would they take over the payments? Or would that be something that would be negotiated?
It's a loaded question.
Good deal.
As a question says, layers off the onion, right? If there was a district forum that the city participated in, whichever one, at that time, depending on how the JPA agreement was written up or the district agreement was written up, the trucks would then be, because we own all the equipment, all that equipment would have to, generally speaking, have a third man and go through everything, and then the other communities or whatever would have to buy in to that capital amount that would be their share. So to answer your other question, because the financing would be through the city, I'm sure the city would be responsible for the final payoff. I doubt they would be able to transfer the loan or the financing.
But with the district, or other townships or whoever's involved. Paid for.
And then,
So would that count as ours, or would that be in limbo, like?
Well, I kind of understood, John, it goes district ownership.
it would, generally speaking, if the fire district is, if a fire district is formed, everything gets put out to appraisal. You would work out, negotiate if you're gonna accept the payments for everything over 1, 10, 20 years, whatever, for the equalization of assets. And that depends on how the project ends up being finalized. And then, but as far as the assets, they would be kept, transferred to that district. And there again, it depends on how that's written up, because a lot of cities will put clauses in, as the district were to fail, all equipment reverts back to where it came from.
With that being said, and, to, bring back what you said about talking about this in a long time, has this been discussed at those meetings, and is anyone that we partner with in this area also in favor of the ladder truck? Like Rock Creek, or, anybody that we
don't partner with Rock.
anybody at the fire district meeting that's interested in what we're doing here, are they interested in the ladder truck as well? That's something they're excited about.
I don't think I've heard any conversation about that. I don't think it would be part of the conversation.
You know, talk about our new equipment with,
They're well aware of what we have for equipment, but, you know, the talks are aimed at locations, how we would man it, how we would possibly have substations. There's a lot of different variables that are brought in, but it's not about where you put what truck or what piece of apparatus.
it would,
The outlook of this truck has been brought up at committee meeting with the anticipation that the city was gonna be funding it, and at that time, no one had any feedback at that meeting. Since then, I have heard from Marcy that she would get a phone call from one. That there's a perception that, you know, out of town, you don't need it,
oh, okay.
and our old one we used out of town as much as we did in town.
So the barn, hay, electric.
Metal roofs on a house with a chimney fire,
You can't climb.
Oh, I don't doubt that
but there's been a couple people that have reached out.
being used, but yeah, we're gonna be good partners too in the future. Just nice to know, to have the discussion. A lot of money.
Any further discussion? Not, I would like to entertain a motion one way or the other for this request for council action.
I'll make the motion that we go ahead. Struck.
Motion made by Dave. I will go ahead and second Dave's motion. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, sir. 8.2, request for council action, code enforcement policy with attorney review.
So we had the city attorney review, and he his minimal corrections. The questions that he had, we addressed with his recommendations of changing.
I have one point of clarification that I can't. I tried to make it make sense in my head, but I can't. And it's on page 112 of 129, or under section 2 of definitions. It's the red line at the very end of that paragraph that says, if an administrative citation is contested, it shall be dismissed, and the person contesting the administrative citation may be issued a criminal citation summons for the violation. Failure to pay the administrative citation within the time required may result in a misdemeanor or petty misdemeanor charge brought against the alleged violator in accordance with city ordinances. So the way I'm reading that is like if somebody doesn't agree and they contest, then it gets dropped and it becomes a criminal issue.
It can. Currently, our code of ordinances state that if you don't pay it, well, technically, it's anything that we issue for an administrative citation is a criminal misdemeanor. So we could pursue that way without even administering an administrative citation.
So every letter we send out to any property owner, we're dealing with violation. Every letter has a statement on there where they have the right to appeal. And when they get to the point where we issue a citation, we've passed the deadlines for compliance. So at that point, they haven't complied with what we've done. That's is issued. At that point, it's treated like it would be an invoice from the city, like you would pay your invoice.
So so I understand it, right? You get a call for grass. You say, hey, grass guy, it's 12 inches long. You got to cut grass. We're going to give you a week. And grass guy says, kick rocks. I'm not going to cut my grass. And then you follow up and say, you got to cut your grass. And he says, kick rocks. I'm not going to cut my grass. And now the time for cure, the time to make arrangements with the city has passed. And that's when we have to go to other enforcement mechanisms. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'm still not in favor of that portion because it feels like the justice isn't being blind, it's being forced upon. I think it's going to be hard to fight. It's either, like you said, pay or have it escalate, and now they got to prove that they're innocent. I don't like that because I think you should have to prove.
So on the on the first, on the letters that we send prior to administering an administrative citation, they have the right to appeal right then and there. So if they think that they want to allow their grass to remain 12 inches long, they can appeal and come up, and then we put it before council and you guys make the ultimate decision on that. If they don't make that appeal, and then we send the second letter of, hey, you know, we're giving you extra time, blah, 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 they still have that appeal process that they can still follow. But on the third and final one, then we send the citation. Technically, our code of ordinances states, straight out states, we can issue that administrative citation immediately. We don't do that. We give people time and options.
Well, what happens most of the time, Kyle, in all the cases I was ever involved in, when that comes to that point, and it goes back where they get the citation, they get the court papers and stuff, generally they come back with either their attorney or whatever between the parties, and they can settle at that point. It doesn't necessarily have to go to a trial or a hearing. There's plenty of time for it to resolve it. Just by the citation being issued, you get it resolved. So I never was involved in any that anybody I felt was punished or put bullied into.
It still feels like the city has the ability to bully or be heavy-handed in their enforcement, and I don't really like that.
So currently we have two mechanisms in which we can deal with non-compliance, and that's one, the administrative citation, which they have to deal with financially. The second one is just issuing a misdemeanor. We send it off to Reese, our county attorney, and they deal with that legally. It's a heavier fine, and then it's also a misdemeanor charge. We opt to choose for the administrative citation. You're not getting the legal fees into it. You're not aggressive. You know what I mean? Getting the $75 citation versus you're getting a ticket in the mail.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the attorney addressed it as well. I mean, we can go right to the way our code is currently written, we can go right to the attorney for criminal immediately. We don't even, that's why we're trying to put this enforcement in place, this policy in place, just so that we have clear things. And yes, I think our code truthfully needs some updating, but
The goal is compliance.
Yeah.
And we've been willing to work with people. Somebody can't get their lawn mowed, it's a simple phone call. And we've shown that we're willing to extend timelines if need be to get that done. So the citation is kind of a last resort. That individual hasn't reached out to the city. They haven't communicated with us one bit, or they're just not going to do it. That's when we go to that. That's that.
and even at that, they still have 30 days, pay that administrative citation and get their stuff done. At that 30 days is when we actually have to do physically something.
Yes, I understand the reason, the mechanism for citations. I, first and foremost, go to senior citizens who have a health crisis. And I just want to be assured that just because they don't answer, you do try to make face-to-face contact. And maybe even, I don't know how you poke around a little bit, but make sure that it isn't something like that. We've had a handful of things come back to the city that are just awful when that's happened.
Yeah, we usually,
We attempt to make contact, knock on the door. We don't poke around unless we.
I'm
make
not saying
contact.
poke around that way,
Right.
but saying, hey, it's this house over here, it's.
And if we can't make that face-to-face contact, that's what we should allow.
I think it would be, and this is just my opinion, but I think it would be awesome if you guys could type up what you just said so that it exists either as part of this policy or an addendum to this policy, that it is not the city's position to go to giving you a fine. We want to work with you. We want to educate you. We want to, but here are the steps that legally, if you don't want to educate it by it, we're not just going to go straight.
Right.
It's complaint driven, correct?
Yeah.
But not universally forced. You're not going out and patrolling.
Right.
And that's the part I have a hard time with, because I foresee a problem with complaints being driven to try and penalize neighbors that they don't like back and forth and using up city resources. And then you guys having the gray area to determine who has a better case? What if it's proved that you're friends with the person that's making the complaints?
So we have had repetitive or retaliation complaints. We don't see them as retaliatory. We verify if it's valid or not. If it matches our code and following what our code states, then it's an invalid complaint. But if it doesn't match our code and something is wrong, then it's a valid complaint and we follow our steps.
What are you looking for today with this?
Possible approval with the attorney's recommendations. Have changes?
I'd like to see Dan's statement in there before we approve it though. And
Would
vote on
you like to table this or make a motion to approve with that addition?
it. I'd like to table it until the first October meeting and read it as its entirety.
Okay, so a motion from Kyle,
I'll second this motion.
second from Gina. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. 8.3, Dressel Fire Hydrant Replacement.
Attached to the agenda is Russell, who's currently working on the pond, Meadows Loop, and Public Works went out and got a quote from them on these 4 hydrants.
So I was hoping email was gonna be attached also, because this doesn't tell the whole story,
I noticed that wasn't in my question.
not even close. So Greg's estimate on the 4 hydrants without street pad under is $84,097 for the water.
Well, it's not the 20,000. I got really
I
excited.
got really excited too. I was looking at it, I'm like, well, this is just removal. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
No
where's
restoration.
no, and I'm like, this isn't even hydrant or
Okay.
so.
Noticed.
I thought you had a few of them stacked.
I know, it's like sitting around.
To clarify, you said the total cost was
Well,
84.
that's an estimate was $84,097 was Greg's estimate
For everything.
without street patching and gutter, which probably all of them would need some type of
Well,
street patching.
you know,
Three of them gutter.
we do need to fix our hydrants. Do you have, some suggestions on how we can afford?
I guess what I'd like to do is budget for it, because we're just light in the budget for hydrant replacement because they went just crazy. And if we were to add some additional funds in the water fund for hydrant replacement and
Do you think it'll stay around this price though too? Because I thought, because it wasn't around, they're already there, this could be the cheapest way.
yeah, but I don't think that's the case.
But one of the challenges is, forgive me if I'm wrong, we had one hydrant, either repair or maintenance, put in the budget for years past, did we not?
Mhm.
And so these have still been broken. We weren't doing it. And I'm guessing at that time it was probably cheaper than where we're at now. It's kind of the argument going back to the ladder truck, the further out you push it.
Yeah, and we've had been spending that money on a lot of the hydrants that were out of service were falling into reconstruction projects too, so they were getting fixed and
Talking about the email you sent?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, you did mention to attach that. I just have the attachment.
yeah,
I wouldn't have known to wanted that attached.
You know, I was a member of the fire department since the mid-70s, and I've heard the same argument from, and nothing against you, Maury, but I've heard this from every public works director that I've ever had in this town. And it just, this can just keeps kicking down the road. And the only thing I would be in favor of, if you come and put together a plan, but I want something done. I want the worst one, the one that is the chief to label them this one is the most important, that one, that one, and that one, but I want them in a row, and I want them labeled, and I want them budgeted for on an ongoing basis, because this has gone on since the seventies. This is ridiculous. And I understand that they go up in price, but it's one of those items that keeps getting chopped off because of everything else. And I'm sorry, that is our ultimate responsibility as a city, is to provide public protection. And we always tend to just kind of kick that one aside for some reasons.
Is this an item that can be paid for out of the water fund?
That's where it would come from.
A water system improvement.
Did you say?
Ask the question. You know that before.
So 84,000.
I know in my world that hydrants aren't getting any cheaper because most of the parts and components that come from a hydrant aren't made in the United States. And availability is getting higher. Like I was just back in Seattle, we paid $10 grand for a hydrant.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the pipe on it, the
The
duct,
valve or,
nothing, just the hydrant.
so,
And for me, it seems like a lot of money, but how much money would it cost if somebody needed that hydrant to hook up on, where firefighters have to make a different decision to get water for someplace else? That's where I go, and to me, that's it. We can't put a price on that.
originally when I brought this forward, I did have, like lineal footages of where the next hydrant is. And I think the furthest was like 275.
Which is a waste.
How much hose do you have on the truck now?
1,200 feet on it.
It's a ways, but I guess the thought would be that if you stop to grab the hydrant, it was out of service, and you drug out all that hose, now you gotta go to the next hydrant. How much does 270 feet of LDH weigh down to drag that down the road? Yeah. You're not probably gonna do that with one firefighter.
Right. That's why we marked the hydrants out of service also. So, but it's entirely up to you, to the council. I'm not fighting this. If you want to spend
No, I
money,
know you're.
have them hire them and have them do it.
My thought would be to get them all done and then up the hydrant budget a little bit, that if one does go out of service, we have the funds to fix it right away and we don't let 4 or 5 or any more build up. We just take care of them.
Do we know when Dressel is starting the loop work?
I do not know that.
Because I agree.
We just, I know, I'm sorry, I might have missed it, but didn't include.
Right.
Correct.
Did or did not?
Yeah.
Any ballpark idea on what for would cost for patching and stuff?
Well,
$20,000.
Well, yeah, no one.
it'd probably be, it could be close. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I mean, would you just set a amount not to exceed a certain amount?
Not to exceed 125. 25. Well, Greg's estimate is 84. But it doesn't leave any room for.
So would the choice be either to spend this money this fall or budget it for 2026 and start in the spring? Or what would our choice?
I would prefer that, because, I mean, just even the water main loop project's gonna be a time consuming for,
They give you any indication if, since they're here, this is a discounted price, or this is just
He
what
said
they charge?
no.
Yeah, I don't, this is kind of their bid price, so I personally don't mind Dave's comment on coming up with a plan and budgeting
Here's the
for
crystal ball that we've been.
budgeting for it next year. I mean, every year we can increase the budget if needed, for replacement.
What I worry about is, what if next year 2 hydrants go out and we only plan to fix 4?
Yeah, and LGA is anymore. That's in the bunch. Just
I don't know if we will, but if it gets down to -60 and something weird happens, I don't know.
Pretty much all the hydrants that are right now are old hydrants that cannot be repaired. 90% of the other hydrants that are newer, we can fix them. They're repairable, so.
A lot of them are just, what, 2 connections, that's what you said, or inch and a quarter, or inch and a half pipe, or what? Steamers on any of them, or not?
There's a steamer on, for sure, one of them.
That's part of the problem too, you know.
I'm in
But-
favor of doing them all. This is again something that I feel like the city's been talking about for quite some time. We've been collecting money for water rates to do water system improvements. This is a vital water.
Correction, we did not raise water rates in 2025.
No, I'm just saying up until, over the last rate study. That's what the money is for, is to do things like this.
Yeah, but the fee schedule wasn't finalized.
We did raise it.
No,
No, we,
Did not.
We did budget one for next year that would still come out of the water fund, correct?
What was in the budget this year? Was that 10 grand?
10,000, yeah.
So there's 10,000, so we're talking 10,000 off that. That's
so
a big
we
chunk.
can
Come on now.
the cost. Okay. You looking for a motion then to do something one way or the other here?
Well, are they gonna be able to get the curb and gutter and all that stuff, whatever they have to repair, done this year? I don't think they will, so are we gonna be responsible for paying these people and then they come back, or are we gonna withhold some money on this?
Well, that doesn't even include the curb and gutter patching.
No, I know, but I mean, okay, but
So
We
we,
don't know we're getting discounted all since they're here. Is council interested in us actually going out to others to get bids on quotes on these?
well, who's gonna do the curb and gutters if they don't?
I'm comfortable with.
well, we just hired it done.
I'm
So they don't
comfortable
want-
getting another bid.
They would give us another bid.
Okay, so that wasn't even part of their talk at all, even doing that.
No, and I think if we systematically repaired them, we could have local contractors be working on them and save money that way too.
I would make a motion that we table this until our first October meeting, pending additional estimates if we can, and maybe Greg's restoration and his estimate attached to that, so we can make
I'll second
a
that.
holistic decision.
Okay, so your motion is to go out for more bids?
I would think so, 1 or 2. So
No.
since we have 2 motions, is the first October meeting gonna be get quotes back from all the potential customers? Or
And then-
would the end of October be a better time to get some RFPs? Or I will amend my motion to the second.
And I doubt that will get the work done.
And speaking of that, then when we're going that late, I don't think we'll get bids to do it this fall. So I think we're kind of being, I don't mind tabling it and thinking about it. But I feel like this fall it's probably this one or making it for 2026.
The only thing I would say is that if we get bids now, better deal than if we wait until the spring to do it, because that's when everybody's calling. So if the contractors out there has proposed work for the moment that the weather gets nice, might get a little bit better deal locking them in now than locking them in later.
So locking them in for work in 2026 or?
If the proposal comes back that they can't do it this fall, which might be pretty tricky given the weather, yeah, that, and we're set, ready to go.
I could live with that.
I can live with that.
So,
So does
okay,
that make sense for
So,
tabling it?
so basically we're gonna budget to have the four hydrants that are out of service right now repaired or replaced in 2026.
more than
Actually,
likely.
we're gonna make that decision the second, we're tabling it for now while you get bids. Then when we have all the information, we can make it.
And I think the best time, I mean, we could work on getting bids, but can wait till January to start getting bids also.
I like doing it in October. Me too.
We did that with the 10th Street, I think.
So should we take a vote or do we have more discussion?
Yeah, any further discussion from council? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
That you up next too? Or no, that's Ellers.
8.4, update on water rate study from Ellers.
Have an update that we're trucking right along. They, asked for, or they have a report sent to them this week. Otherwise, they're projecting this to be done here, so we can work on
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And with contracts and rates, all to do. Any questions from council? Okay, on to new business, 9.1, request for council action, fire department purchase a trailer for UTV. Hello again, Mr. Miller. Hello.
Basically, to give you a quick summarization, is that it's the spending of the remainder of the money that was allocated from the ARPA funds for the fire department, which full disclosure was it was $12,200. The quote that we got $849, of which that it'd be the balance of $649.99, which I would propose to be spent out of this fire department's general operating budget under machinery and equipment.
Any questions from council? I would entertain a motion one way or the other for this purchase.
Go ahead and make a motion to approve the request for the trailer UTV.
I'll second it.
Motion from Gina, second from Dave. Any further discussion from council? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Happy shopping. 9.2. We'll schedule special council meeting to approve 2026 preliminary budget.
You have a chance to look at your schedules, something next week, so we can get the preliminary set. And the mayor has reached out that Tuesdays and Wednesdays are not great for him.
Thursdays are not.
Tuesdays and Thursdays are out, right?
Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. It sounds like.
Oh, Wednesdays too. Oh. Well, Friday we have the fire department has to get together. Retired and active.
I have to work, unfortunately.
On Friday?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Are we looking at evening meetings?
I'm open to.
What do you think?
So Monday.
Men?
Monday is the only one I free.
Days are easier for me, but I know that's not easier for any of you.
It needs to be set by, Gary would push it out to the 29th.
I think
That's not enough time. For
it's,
any-
is Monday work for you?
I don't know that you have enough time to notice it. You know, would you? There's that. You have to notice it tonight.
Today, I'll still complain. No.
Probably by 30.
The 30th, we have.
Well, we're only asking for everything in the preliminary budget. I was cut it down after that, so.
I can make the 20. I can make the 20. I can be pretty flexible next week. I would like to give finance as much time as possible, but if the 20 is the only thing that works.
If it was a Friday, what time would it be Friday?
We have public works at 8:30, but if we're able to make sure that that stays maybe down to an hour and a half, maybe we can set the
It will
meeting
be.
at
It will be.
10:30.
Are you available?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's a daytime.
Friday for you.
I can do Friday morning.
This other,
Yeah, public works will be less than an hour.
I just have to be out for work by 12, by noon, so.
Sorry.
Friday, 9:30.
I think so.
10 o'clock?
9:30.
And we're talking the 26th, correct?
Correct.
September 26th.
Yes,
9:30.
I have to get from Public Works buildings too.
We'll just,
Is it here? It's gonna be here or what?
we could do it.
Is it Public Works or no? Yeah, we'll have it here.
Yeah.
Is it available?
Do it at small conference room.
In Hillside.
We could.
Small conference room.
The only thing is that if anybody wants to join, it doesn't give you a lot of.
True enough.
Since it is taxpayer money, there might be a straight or two.
Okay, there might be, but
Storage.
Okay, so
What
9:45.
about the fire hall?
Okay. Okay. Fire hall,
Friday, 9/26 at 9:45 a.m. at the fire hall for a preliminary budget meeting.
all right.
9/26 at 9:45.
9/26 at 9:45,
I don't
10:04.
think we decided.
Okay, planning. Temp, request for council action resolution 2025-31, conditional use permit amendment for 129th Street Southwest.
So this one has a resolution number was wrong, and so we're just need reapproval of it with the new resolution number.
What's the number supposed to be?
It was read at 2025-16. It is 2025-31.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve resolution 2025-31.
I'll second it.
Right, motion by Gina, second by Dave. Any further discussion from council? Resolution, so it's a roll call vote. Ms. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
And I'll also vote aye. Motion carries. 10.2, request for council action, resolution 2025-32, certificate of minor subdivision Stransky.
So I did update the request for council action. I did speak with Stransky's in our conversations. We kind of played phone tag for a day or two, and she emailed me back, and I do have the email. She goes, "We're fine with the conditions." They actually came in this week and started their application for that, hoping that this gets approved. I also do have confirmation from the DNR that they're in full approval of this going forward, so.
I'll make the resolution to approve resolution 2025-32.
Motion from Kyle. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dave. This is a resolution. Roll call vote. Ms. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Tabitha. Right, on to 11, closed session.
Mind if I step up and use the restroom?
Let's take 3. Going.